What went wrong with Kalvin Phillips? It looks like the former Leeds man is finally set to call his time on his Manchester City career. Temporarily, of course, just a loan move away, but it looks like Kalvin Phillips is going to join West Ham on loan, if you believe the reports. Jacob Steinberg, The Guardian, I think it was yet The Independent, either way, he's at The Guardian, said that City are still in talks over a loan move, but a deal is expected to go through if City lower their demands of the loan fee, with the two clubs still apart on that figure. I still think this is going to happen. At some point, City will accept a compromise on that deal and let him go on loan to West Ham. Then immediately, it's very tempting just to sort of get a little bit introspective for a second and try and work out what went wrong with Kalvin Phillips, because City don't make many mistakes in the transfer market, which makes this particular case interesting. It makes it an anomaly. It makes it something worth considering a tiny bit more. Don't forget, guys, if you are new to the channel, please do hit the like button. Once again, this is just a little mini series of questions answered while my son sleeps upstairs. Give the video a like if you are a fan of these shorter videos, not a live video, of course, and subscribe to the channel if you are new here as well. It does help support the channel massively. I'm so close to 70k. Let's get there. Did a video yesterday about 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙬𝙚, City's former CFO, joining Man United. Go check that out if you want to as well. But let's talk about Kalvin Phillips. Now, of course, when Kalvin Phillips joined Manchester City, there was a reasonable amount of expectation. He'd just come off the back of being voted England's Player of the Year a year or two beforehand. By all accounts, he was a pretty good Premier League player. He was an established part of an England side that was doing well internationally. He was reaching the later stages and finals of knockout tournaments. And Kalvin Phillips was going from strength to strength, of course, playing under the tutelage as well of a man that Pep Guardiola absolutely respects and idolises, Marcelo Bielsa. You would have thought on paper that it made an awful lot of sense to sign someone like Kalvin Phillips, a good age. All the background checks would have shown a very considered, erudite, respectful young man, a man liked by his peers, and a good personality, happy faces as Guardiola would say. So the background checks would have stood up perfectly. A man clearly capable of playing to a good level possession-wise, given what he's done for England, given what he did for Leeds at this point. A man totally at ease in the Premier League, of course, given his experience. It made an awful lot of sense. And also, a man maybe willing to sit and sort of learn from Rodri as time passed, with an idea eventually of getting more game time. He wouldn't come in and bang the door down, basically. You'd be forgiven for thinking, and this is how I felt at the time, I can be honest, of a signing similar to someone like 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙬𝙚. The parallels are very obvious. Kalvin Phillips was a leader. I'm not sure if he was captain at Leeds, I can't actually remember, but he was a leader at very least. Probably wore the captain's armband at some point. And he was considered Leeds' best player, if you ask Leeds fans. He was in a team that was going down, a team that tried to play nice football, but weren't quite good enough. And he was absolutely their star player at a similar age as well as 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙯𝙧. And Ake, of course, once again, Bournemouth fans declared him their best player. He was excellent as they struggled, easily ready for a step up. And also, Ake did take a little bit of time as he first joined Manchester City to adapt. I think for a long time, a lot of people thought 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙯𝙧 wasn't quite good enough, just wasn't good enough to be a Manchester City player. I remember the discussions online from fans. I remember people questioning it. I remember people saying it was a waste of money and we should have signed player X, Y, and Z. But eventually, through his hard work, his ability, and a little bit of patience, which it requires, 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙯𝙧 became a valuable member of this squad and, of course, a treble winner. Absolutely there on merit. And I can always remember Ake's celebrations as we beat Inter Milan at full time. For whatever reason, Kalvin Phillips hasn't followed that same path. I think the immediate place to go, if you're going to question this decision, is why. You're going to go, well, he didn't get the game time that maybe he deserved to try and prove himself. Yes, I would absolutely agree that's probably true. But also I'd argue there's a big no in front of that as well, because Guardiola doesn't work that way. I mean, we have a sort of myopic view of football as fans, and I'm guilty of this all the time as well. Occasionally I can step out of this bubble that we're in as fans, because all we see as fans is football matches. It's all we've got to judge. And if we can't judge him because he's not playing, then we can feel that he's not had a chance to prove himself. But we forget 90% of football is away from the pitch. So much of football is on the training ground. That is where players win and lose their confidence in the manager. That's where they get a chance to prove they should be in the lineup. And I think we're not privy to so much that goes on behind the scenes, and that's where Guardiola judges players. It always springs to mind youth players like Carlos Borges, for example, where people go, why is he not getting a chance? He was brilliant for the DDS. I mean, the most likely explanation is he probably trained with the first team and just didn't look that good. Because Kyle Walker was a better winger, better defender, Nathan Ake, people like that, they probably just shut him down really easily. And in that instance, Pep's not going to do anything. And I think we're probably seeing another example in a very similar trait here, that Kalvin Phillips simply, sadly, and I think this is the crux of it, just did not impress at all behind closed doors. I can presume they felt he would be good enough technically. Because you see players where they need to improve a little bit. But once again, the attitude was there, the profile was there, the price was there, the experience was there. It made an awful lot of sense on paper. But sometimes you don't see if a player is good enough until you look them right in the eyes and see if they're made of it or see what they can do on the pitch. The level that Kalvin Phillips was suddenly asked to play was so much higher than what he was used to. I don't mean chasing City around when City play Leeds. Yeah, I'm sure he's used to playing against City, but playing for City, the expectations are so different. Guardiola, of course, is obsessed with midfield. He's quite very famously said in the past that if he could field a team full of midfielders, he would do. And there's a reason for that, because he thinks midfielders have the best sense of perspective, the best sense of the flow of the game. They're good going forward, they're good defensively. They're the most balanced footballers, traditionally speaking, at least. So he values what a midfielder can do, so he's fussy about midfielders. And Kalvin Phillips, I heard rumours that immediately, as he was on the training ground, City were already having doubts about him, about letting Romeo Lavia go and bringing him in. In hindsight, it looks like City got this massively wrong. You won't know until you know. I get that. But it looks like Kalvin Phillips, and Guardiola's sort of implicitly said this over the past few months in press conferences, simply just wasn't good enough for Manchester City Football Club. I think Kalvin Phillips is a very good player, but being a very good footballer and being a very good Manchester City player are two totally different things. The demands that Guardiola places on players are so different to what other coaches will. Kalvin Phillips could easily be a top 4 level player. I don't know if he is, but he could be. But in an entirely different system, an entirely different set of circumstances, and an entirely different set of job attributes, in terms of what he's been asked to do. At City, you have to be the quickest, the sharpest mentally. You have to be able to see things before they do. Now, when I've watched Kalvin Phillips play for City, it's always struck me how slow he is to react to things. A good friend of mine said he feels like Kalvin Phillips does something and spends 5 seconds watching it. You'll play a pass and he'll stay still and watch it. He'll make a tackle, then he'll stay still and not follow the game. Contrast that with someone like Rico Lewis. Guardiola, and even Phil Foden said this as well. Phil Foden said Rico Lewis is smarter than he was at the same age. But Guardiola's always talked about how he's never had to teach Rico Lewis anything. Absolutely nothing ever. Because Rico Lewis just gets it. He understands the game state. He understands the flow of the game. He understands that if someone goes there, he needs to be there. He's always moving, always scanning the pitch. He's quick and incisive in thought. He's intelligent. He understands entirely the job that he's been asked to do. I don't think Kalvin Phillips can do it, sadly. I think Kalvin Phillips intends to, has all the great intentions. I don't think he's lazy. I don't think he lacks fitness. I think mentally he's just not sharp enough, and that is absolutely fine. And sadly, this is why I don't think he's got a chance. Guardiola is a winner. Guardiola is not one to mince his words, and he's not one to waste anyone's time either. If Guardiola felt that Kalvin Phillips could learn it, he would be getting game time. He would be. Nathan Ake did get game time. Even if he wasn't always involved as much as he wanted to be in the first season, he still got game time as Guardiola sought to see proof that Ake was learning what he taught him on the pitch. I don't think Kalvin Phillips is showing any examples of learning what Guardiola is teaching him, even on the training pitch. Never mind the actual starting 11, or even off the bench. So I think sadly what happened is Guardiola looked at Kalvin Phillips very early on and felt, this guy just doesn't get it. He can't do what I ask him. And sadly, he's never going to be able to do it. That could be harsh, it could be, but there's no one who understands midfielders probably in the history of the game better than someone like Guardiola. Maybe Cruyff or someone like that. But either way, Guardiola sadly made his mind up very early, which could be seen as cruel from the outside in. But ultimately, you only have to respect what Guardiola's done in the game and to understand why he takes his decisions. If you take a look at what he's done, he understands immediately if someone has it, if they have the bravery and the conviction to play how he wants. And I don't think Kalvin Phillips sadly does, and that's fine. It's fine. It'll be painted as a poor move, and I'm sure rival fans will look at Guardiola and say, you've wasted a good talented player there. But sometimes things just do not work. How many times have you personally gone and done something or been somewhere or got a new job where this should have been perfect? You should have fitted perfectly. For whatever reason, you haven't meshed with that team and it's been a decision that you regret. Sometimes that happens in life and in football. And even though it could have been better. I mean, he was a reasonably safe bet this transfer. But for whatever reason, Kalvin Phillips just isn't quite what Guardiola wanted, and that is fine. Sadly, he is going to move on. It's been quite painful watching him sort of become nothing more than a Sergio Gomez type character in this squad. And what I mean by that, I mentioned it recently on a video how I categorised the bench in terms of definitely going to get on, might get on, will only get on if we're winning 4-0. Kalvin Phillips has gone right down to the bottom bit now. He only comes on if we're winning 3 or 4-0, which is it's sort of the category that you put young players in. It's a real sad shame that he's been relegated to that level, but it's true. And at this point, there's a reasonable humiliation to it that I want him to move on through his own career, because I don't think it's good to have anyone hanging around like that. Especially at his age. He's not young, and he needs to be playing football. Hopefully this West Ham move goes through, because he needs it right now. I do think it'll happen. I think City will compromise on this, and hopefully we see the best of Kalvin Phillips again, because by all accounts he's a lovely man, But City have no room for passages, and in this side right now, Guardiola has made his mind up. And if the best manager in the world makes his mind up, you sort of got to respect that. Kalvin Phillips, I wish you all the best, mate, when it finally goes through. But sadly, that is what went wrong, I think. I think it's sadly as simple as that. Let me know your theories down in the comments below, and if you agree that he's had a hard time or it was totally fair, let me know. Like this video, subscribe in a bit. Bye bye Blues.